Hi, I'm Rob Pincus. Welcome to the Extreme Close Quarters Tactics video of the Personal Defense series. It's important to realize that you may not be in an open space when your critical incident comes. It could be an elevator, it could be a stairwell, or it could just be somewhere where you're pushed up against a wall and don't have that normal range of motion that we have when we're always training on a wide open square range or in front of a big dirt berm or even in a dojo or other martial arts training area or gymnasium where we have wide open spaces. We can move our hands, move our legs, and we don't worry about bumping into things or interacting with someone within 2 arms reach. And that's really the distance that we're going to worry about today when we talk about defending yourself in that close quarters or extreme close quarters situation when you're within 2 arms reach of someone that you're having to control or possibly even use lethal force against when they're trying to harm you or someone else. Understanding how your body works in that environment, how to use your whole body, your leverage, your legs, your back, your torso muscles, your arms, and whatever tools you might have, such as a firearm, to defend yourself in that environment is an incredibly important part of your self-defense preparation. So today we're going to look at everything that happens within 2 arms reach, extreme close quarters tactics. What we've seen is a whole bunch of examples of people who were on top of officers, inside of cars, next to cars, in houses, rolling around on couches, on the ground, trying to kill them. Whether that was through brute physical force, beating them, whether that was through a knife, whether that was through a gun, whether that was choking, crushing, whatever the technique being used was kind of irrelevant, because all of them end up being in contact like this, trying to control that knife, doing this and wrestling over the weapon and forgetting that you're actually in a fight. Being in a situation where you're here and there's no weapon involved and this person's just on top of you, beating the crap out of you, and you're trying to survive. So this is the position that we're going to fight back from. Jump up. This is where we're going to be, is down here, worrying about trying to maintain control of another person's body and not get hurt any more than we already are while shooting. All right, and this is why we say when we talk about combat focus shooting, the idea that the shooting should be the simple part. The shooting should just be happening. You shouldn't be thinking about trigger control when you're shooting. If you are, you're not going to be able to shoot nearly as well under those types of circumstances, under those conditions. Right? The shooting should be the automatic part. Shooting should be easy. Trigger control at this point should not be a big deal. All right, so that's not really what we're worried about. When we get into these shooting positions, the idea will be to go very, very slowly at first. Just like we with combat focus shooting, extend, touch, press. We're going to speed up. We're going to get you into realistic situations, and eventually by the end of the day, you'll actually do this kind of stuff in a force-on-force scenario. You actually do this with the person, and you'll do sim work and all that stuff. So give me your Glock. Clear?
Clear.
All right. So one thing we want to think about is the use of the pistol when it's up against our body and orienting the muzzle obviously towards the threat. It's a very simple plain English command: get the gun up out of the holster and then orient towards the threat. All right, so if the threat's in front of us, we're still going to orient towards the threat. What's important to understand is what we want to do with this is make sure that we're keeping it in contact with our body. All right, did you guys, when you went through the academy, ever have the fight for life thing? 30 or 60 seconds where one guy's the bad guy, one guy's the good guy, somebody tries to cuff the other guy, and somebody tries to take the gun away. Right? I've never seen anybody get cuffed during those things. If one person, especially someone who's just gone through a police academy and is in Officer Survival Week or whatever you guys call it, doesn't want to get cuffed, they're probably going to be able to fight their way out of it. But I've seen a lot of guns taken away. And more importantly, I've seen a hell of a lot of guns fought over that shouldn't have been fought over. I mean, if you think about it, if it's set up the way it usually is, you go into it knowing that the guy's going to try to take your gun, but having to cuff the guy. And that guy spins on you and you end up wrestling around with the gun in the holster, and sooner or later it comes out or it doesn't come out. Either way, the first mistake that gets made is pulling the gun to here. In all of those positions that we're going to shoot in, whether it's here, whether it's here, or whether it's here, the magazine well is going to be against our body. All right, that's one of the number one fundamental rules. We come up, magazine well comes up against the body. Oriented here, where obviously we're going to be down against the thighs, inside the legs. We're not going to be, here, straight up and down, floating around. Okay, we don't want to turn it around this way and put the slide up against our body where we're going to have to worry about causing a malfunction, something like that. Let's work with the first position, which is just going to be, I've controlled his gun. I'm hitting him. I'm trying to get this gun offline. He starts shooting into the crowd. He's stronger than me. The gun's coming back. I come up, orient the muzzle towards the threat. If I'm here, got the gun in my holster, the knife comes up out of the pocket, right? The knife comes up out of the pocket. If my reaction is, hey, he's got a knife, I need to shoot him, and I go like this, that's that bad tie we talked about yesterday. So I've got to stay in contact and actually move in. So that's one of the principles we want to work with. If I'm within 2 arms reach, okay, I'm much better off if I see the knife coming out, moving in to control that threat, trying to control it and end it right here. But if I can't, if he's faster, smarter, stronger, now I've got to switch that lethal response. But I can't let go of the knife while I do that. Most attacks are going to be right-handed. Your defense is going to be left-handed. If he attacks with the other hand, right hand comes up, I come in for the block, I'm doing this, maybe I can get him against the wall, maybe not, maybe he gets me against the wall. At this point, if I want to shoot, I've got to transition the control to this hand, whatever control I can get. So if I can control the transition with the offhand, come back down to the gun, pull it up, orient, touch press. We're here at the Valhalla Training Center inside of our scenario ranges to get an idea of what an extreme close quarters shooting situation might be like. In the context of our defensive use of a firearm when we're in contact with someone, we need to talk a little bit about what's realistic and what's not, what's likely and what isn't. A lot of times you'll see people doing something like this, just leaning backwards, reaching back, drawing a firearm and orienting to shoot towards someone that is in very close or actually in contact with you. The problem with this model is that it doesn't actually give you contact with the threat. If you're going to need to use lethal force to defend yourself against someone in close quarters, the chances are incredibly likely that you're not going to be able to get your firearm out and into a shooting position before they've actually made contact with you. So if your premise is, I'm going to get the gun out and shoot from here in this speedy fashion, what you actually need to realize is you're probably going to be in contact. Therefore, training on a three-dimensional mannequin, something that you're actually in contact with, where you're trying to stop someone from drawing a firearm or stop someone from hitting you or choking you, controlling them and dealing with this directly while you're drawing and firing is incredibly important. Taking this out of context and simply drawing the firearm, holding it close to your body and shooting is skills in isolation. We always want to teach defensive skills and practice our skills in context. The context of an extreme close quarter shooting is contact. We want to make sure we're in contact whenever we can be. Now, if you don't have a three-dimensional mannequin that you can train against, you still want to have some type of contact as safely as you can. Here at Valhalla, we use three-dimensional mannequins made of plastic and wood on the stand with a metal and rubber background along with frangible ammunition. We're not concerned with splash or ricochet like we would be if we were using jacketed ammunition or non-frangible lead rounds. These unjacketed, frangible rounds are very safe to use in this environment. We also have a lot of controls in place with safety officers standing by, watching the angles, watching to make sure no one's hand has gotten behind the target and that our legs are out of the way while we're shooting in these contact positions. You can get 90% of the training value by using an airsoft gun or a simulation gun of some other kind that fires a non-lethal projectile, something like a plastic pellet or a paint round that will allow you to experience these positions at home. I do not advise training with live ammunition unless you're properly supervised in a controlled environment with an experienced instructor who understands the principles involved, not just the positions that you're seeing in this video. When we talk about principles and fundamentals, it's really important to understand that that's what underlies the technique or the tactic that we're training. Principles and fundamentals are the key to being able to apply yourself in a specific situation. It could be critical that you understand why you're doing something, not just how to do something, if things are a little different. For example, if we always train for a target that's directly on top of us to draw and orient the firearm this way, but we get shifted during a close quarters combative interaction where we're sideways to the target. If we always think of pulling the gun out and pointing this way, we've got a problem if our threat's over here. We need to understand the principle involved to get the firearm oriented safely and appropriately in an efficient way towards the threat. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the things that we do to make sure that we're orienting the firearm in a safe and efficient way towards the threat. If I'm squared off towards a threat, I'm going to go ahead and turn this guy around. You can see from this position, if this is where I am when this person tries to draw a gun or pull a knife, or maybe they're trying to choke me or hurt me, and that's important to understand. We're not talking about someone who's standing there with a gun shooting at you. We're talking about something that happens within 2 arms reach, where it's faster for us to move forward and control this firearm before it gets up to be pointed at us. So as it comes out of the pocket or as it comes up from under the shirt, we're actually going to move in to try to control this knife or this gun. By controlling the knife or the gun and then trying to use whatever physical techniques we can to stop the threat, we might not need to use lethal force. And certainly, this is better than backing up and having a bad tie when he gets his gun out and I get my gun out at the same time. And of course, his action is probably going to beat my speed to bring the gun out this way, and that may not even be a tie. I may get shot before I can give any type of response back, or stabbed, or choked, or hit, or knocked out if it's an improvised weapon. So when this close quarters attack starts, anything within 2 arms reach, we're going to train to stop that attack. Whether it's a gun, a knife, a punch, a choke, a tackle, we want to move in to stop that energy, meet that energy with our own. And we're going to talk more about unarmed conflict as well. But right now, let's talk about the point where we're going to get to the response with lethal force. As we come in, I'm going to move into here and try to control this gun and at least make sure it's offline. When it's offline from me, I'm going to get my body in as much contact with my training target as I can, because the reality is, if someone's trying to hurt you, if someone has put you in a position where you're so afraid that you need to use lethal force to defend yourself, they are probably on top of you. They may be grabbing you and trying to stab you. They may be trying to shoot you. They may be sticking a gun in your face. They may be choking you, hitting you, whatever they're doing. This is where you want to be. And by maintaining this contact, you can use a couple of very simple principles to not have the gun taken away from you and to make sure that you're orienting the muzzle safely and efficiently towards your threat. When the gun comes up out of the holster, you want to make sure it stays close to your body. If you pull the gun out of the holster to here and someone sees it or flags it, in other words, you catch their attention because of the movement, this hand is certainly going to come up to grab the gun. Now you're in a wrestling match over another gun. Maybe there's 2 guns in play, or a knife and a gun, or he's still hitting you and he's holding on to your gun. This is not a good situation. If you keep the gun against your body when you draw, you maintain better retention. This person shouldn't even be aware that you have the gun at this point. Orienting the muzzle towards the threat is the next step. When you do so, making sure that you keep the magazine well against your body and your strong side thumb up against your clothing, jacket, body armor, whatever it is you're wearing, is incredibly important. This will allow you to orient the muzzle towards your threat based on your position, body to body. I don't have to look down to see that my muzzle is oriented into this torso. I can be up here, I can be getting choked, I can be blind, I can be in the dark. By coming up out of the holster, orienting, keeping the magazine well against my body and the thumb against my body, because of our contact, I know that the muzzle is oriented in a place that is going to significantly affect this target's ability to keep hurting me. At the same time, by having the magazine well against my torso, in any position as I go around my body, even if I were to shoot behind me for some reason coming across my body because of the position I got into during this altercation, I avoid covering myself with the muzzle. Now, I could certainly cover a limb, I could cover the edge of my body. Depending on my body shape and size, I might even be able to cover a portion of my torso if I had a short-barreled firearm, for example, and I came back this way and I had, say, a larger abdomen area that was going to get covered by the muzzle. That's still better than getting shot, stabbed, choked out, or beaten to death by an adversary. These extreme close quarters contact shooting positions are dangerous. Okay, they are not something you should enter into training lightly. You shouldn't think about their use very lightly. But if you're justified in the defensive use of lethal force and you carry a firearm and you're in this position, using these techniques is better than suffering the intent of the aggressor. Let's take a look at this now live fire and see how this entire process would work if this person did try to pull a gun out of a pocket or up from under a shirt and I was within that 2 arms reach situation. I'm going to recognize the threat. I'm going to react by lowering my center of gravity, bringing my hands up, orienting towards the threat, and then I'm going to respond cognitively by trying to control that weapon. If I were to back up now and try to do a speed position where I'm going to roll the gun back here and shoot, all I'm going to accomplish at best is a bad tie. I need to control that weapon, whether it's a knife or a gun, a fist, a brick, a stick, before it can hurt me. So I'm going to move in to control it. I'm probably going to try to exert whatever force I can, whether it be a knee or a stomp or an elbow or a facial rake, whatever I can do to come in here and try to stop this guy from hurting me. At this point, if I can take the gun away, great. I've taken the gun away. I've taken him out. Maybe this stopped him. Maybe grabbing his face stopped him. Maybe I tripped him and he fell down. Maybe we're lying on the ground, rolling around, wrestling over the gun, pinned up against the wall. Maybe he pushed me back. Whatever the situation is, that could end it, or that could take it to the next level. And if the next level is your recognition of the fact that this person is a lethal threat, even though you are trying to control the weapon, you're going to transition to the use of the firearm. Staying in contact is incredibly important. If you push away and pull your gun out, all you do is give them the space, the opportunity, and the warning to use this hand to try to interfere with your ability to come back with a lethal response to his lethal threat. So coming in here, I can transition, I can get my grip, I can come straight up, orient the muzzle towards the threat with the magazine well and my strong hand thumb against my body. I will then administratively bring my left hand back to the small of my back, because this is a training scenario and we want to be as safe as possible. I'm going to have a safety officer check the angle. When he gives me the okay, I'm going to touch the trigger, press the trigger, release, and then think about what I would do next. Obviously, this kind of a close quarter shooting is going to have a significant effect on this target's ability to present a lethal threat to me. That combat accurate shot might stop this scenario or it might not. If this person doesn't stop fighting and doesn't stop wrestling me, doesn't stop trying to hurt me or those I care about, I may need multiple shots. Again, check with the angle on the safety officer. Multiple close quarters shots could certainly be justified in this situation, especially if we were on the ground, rolling around, and this person continued to resist my attempts to stop them. Understanding the principles involved in extreme close quarters shooting is incredibly important. If I were to be in this position here, with the gun coming up this way, and I pinned it against the wall, and I have my side against this person as I try to stop them, if I couldn't, simply coming up, following the body, and now orienting across the front of my torso, moving my hand administratively to the safety position, checking with the safety officer, touch, press. In this position, I would be doing exactly the same thing. This is a choreographed position. This is applying the same fundamental principles to the realistic position I ended up in. That's an incredibly important part of your close quarters response. Applying fundamentals and ideals and principles is much better than rehearsing choreographed positions. Another important consideration when you're in this position is making sure that that magazine well and your strong side thumb are against your body, and that the muzzle of your firearm does not protrude past your torso. When you're pushed up against your threat, if your muzzle is out beyond your body and you touch against that person, what's going to happen behaviorally is a couple of things. One, when anyone gets poked in their side, in their rib cage, they naturally react by pulling away. The other thing is, if they're in a fight and they're aware of what's going on, especially if they have reason to believe you're armed and that gun gets poked against them, they're immediately going to realize that's the most lethal threat. It's sort of like going like this. If I come up here with the gun and they see it, they're going to stop worrying about fighting me over this gun or this knife or hitting me and immediately put their attention on wrestling over this gun. Well, this gun is the only thing that might save me. I need to make sure I keep it close, keep it controlled, and keep it in against my body. If I go against this target, I might also push the gun out of battery. And as we all know, if we push a gun out of battery and we pull the trigger, nothing happens. All right? In this case, I've made my firearm completely useless and warned him about the existence of this firearm in the first place. Now I'm fighting over a gun and I wasn't able to use it. So by staying in close, but keeping my muzzle behind the furthest extension of my body, I can bring the gun up, orient towards the threat, check my safety officer, make sure his angle is approved, touch and press, and get that shot off without risking warning or disabling my own firearm. Contact shooting isn't easy. Practicing your contact shooting should only be done under direct supervision in a safe and controlled environment. What's the first step of any response to lethal force? Recognition, right? We got to recognize that there's a threat. So what I want you to picture as a threat, and whether if your target has a mannequin arm, that's great. You can grab it as if he's coming up with a weapon. If not, you can just imagine that you're pinning that weapon against the wall. All right, if this were in free space, I'd be grabbing and hitting and going back until one of us was braced against something, whether we fall on the ground or we go against the wall, or we go against the car, whatever it is. You're usually going to have that brace and that thing to use as leverage. For those of you who have like a wrestling or grappling background, you can feel that the body underneath you. You know how you feel the legs and the hips and all the motion. So you know where that body is. Even if you're completely blind and you're up against somebody's body, you can, okay, his legs are here. I've got his arm over here. The torso has to be in between. The more contact you have, the more information you have about the body, the better able you are to orient. All right, this is not just contact shooting in the sense that you're in contact with the person. It's also contact shooting in the sense that you're in contact with the gun. So the gun is attached to your body more than just with your hand. You can use that to help orient on the threat. All right. So we're going to pretend that there's a weapon coming up, either a gun or a knife. Recognize. You're going to go in and engage. And I just want you to come in and give these guys some energy. Now this is hard plastic and some of the edges are beat up. Don't come in and wail it with an elbow because you're just going to hurt your elbow. All right. So you just come in and give it some energy, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little of these things, as if you were really fighting. Maintain your contact with the target, all right? While you're in contact with the target, I'll give you the command to switch to a lethal response, all right? Lethal response is going to be going to the gun. You're going to go to your gun and get your grip, and then you're going to stand by there and get individual instruction from John or I. We will physically be touching you when you take this shot, all right? So we'll have an arm on your shoulder, and we'll just guide you. We're going to double check, triple check, make sure everything's good, and then we'll let you shoot, all right? So right now I want you to face the targets. Go ahead and make your guns ready. Okay, stay in contact and just hold your contact position. Remember, more leverage, more force is better. The more contact you have, the point here is not to be on balance like a martial artist, all right? That if you're on balance, then you probably don't need to shoot this person, all right? You're off balance. Everyone switch legs. If your right leg's forward, put your left leg forward. Get uncomfortable. Get into a position where this person is overpowering you. Transition to a lethal response. Now here's the point where if you didn't have your body against the threat and all you had was your arm, and now you take your arm away to go to the gun, it will dramatically change the relationship between you and this person. Does that make sense? So that's why you want as much hip and torso contact as you can have. If your body's against their body and it's really your weight and your chest and your torso that's holding them in place, then this hand can move and nothing will dramatically change, right? We don't want a whole bunch of stuff to change because then you're going to end up in that circling dance of doom with the gun, all right? What we want is to keep this the same, keep this as static as possible. Transition to a lethal response. Grip your firearm. Remember, when you grip your firearm, you defeat all the retention devices, all right? From this point forward, you guys in the center, just hold tight. John's going to start on that end. I'm going to start down here with Mike. Go ahead and bring the gun up. Okay, keep it against your body as best you can. Orient the muzzle towards the threat. Don't stick the gun into the threat. You'll push the gun out of battery, and you'll also give them a big warning that they're about to get shot. Put your left hand at the small of your back. All shooters. Left hand at the small of your back. All right, double check the legs. Pull your left leg back from the target. Okay? The command only applies to the person that I am touching and talking to. Mike, touch your trigger. Slowly, smoothly press your trigger. Good. Finger off the trigger, reholster. Peter, come up. Orient the muzzle towards the threat. Let's take a look at another position. We talk about not wanting to be choreographed or to imagine a perfect scenario. Obviously, if we're in contact shooting position, someone squared off directly in front of me is a better time than somebody behind me to use contact shooting principles and be able to defend ourselves with this lethal force to a lethal threat. I'd much rather have someone oriented in my front area, as I would normally be when I'm fighting or defending myself, than somebody behind me. But who knows? Maybe we've ended up in a situation where this person tried to draw the gun, I came in here, I really focused on the gun and just was trying to take it away. Meanwhile, this person then grabs me from behind and holds me against the wall. I'm still controlling the gun to a certain extent, but maybe he's shooting into a crowd. Maybe he's shooting at my family. Maybe he's choking me, hitting me on the head, doing something that makes me think this guy is still a lethal threat. I'm going to need to transition my control to my offhand so that I can come in, draw my firearm, and this time I want to avoid the temptation of coming up here and trying to turn around and go after someone. What generally ends up happening is, A, they'll see the gun, they can come in and take this, and we've seen this countless times in force-on-force and training engagements, as well as real-life situations where someone has brought the gun up as if to take a shot into the face area or to take a shot into the torso and come around their body, and people have just circled around, or this person has turned around and ended up wrestling over the firearm. We don't want that. What we want to make sure happens is that while I'm controlling this, we again keep this firearm as close as we can to our body. We're going to use the same type of principle that we do when we cross our body for seated shooting, and that's staying parallel with our thighs so that we don't turn the muzzle inward to cover our own body. So again, I'm here, I'm controlling the firearm, I'm controlling the weapon, I'm controlling that hand that's trying to hit me or choke me. I come up out of the holster, I cross my body parallel with my thighs, I drive down into this area of my leg where I can push the magazine well again, while it's not against my torso, the principle, the fundamental idea of orienting that magazine well tight against the vital portion of my body so that the muzzle and the slide are not next to my body. If we think about it even from this position, when I'm here, if I were to turn that around and put my slide against the body, now the slide could get stopped. I could get one shot off, maybe. Maybe I push the slide against my body so much that the firearm comes out of battery and I can't shoot at all. Or, once again, maybe I injure myself by putting the muzzle too close to my torso. So if I can get into this position here, I can certainly get into a similar position down here. Now the firearm, the magazine well is pushed up against the inside of my leg. The slide is angled 45 degrees away from my body, not tucked in close where it's going to impact my body, get tangled up in clothing. Again, we don't want to interfere with the operation of the slide. We want to make sure it's turned out, and I'm at full extension if I can be. Again, I have upper body mobility. I'm controlling this gun over here. This person may still be trying to hit me or hurt me. Maybe I'm defending myself from blows. Whatever the situation is, trying to peel a bear hug, or I've pushed a choke down to where I can get my shoulder blades off the threat, move forward, and in this case, as you can see, if I have the ground or a wall that I can push this person against, all the better. And I'm going to look for a leg or a foot someplace to put around that will significantly affect the target's ability to hurt me. In this case, I'm going to use the 2x4, and again, with my frangible ammunition, I'm not worried about splash or ricochet. This would be an extremely dangerous technique to practice with lead ammunition set up in this way. I need to be using frangible ammunition, again, in a very controlled environment. As I drive down and find the leg, I touch the trigger, press the trigger, and then I wait to see what the reaction is. Maybe another shot. Maybe the person stops and stumbles and falls down. I can bring the firearm back, again, keeping it against my torso, and maybe get into another position to shoot or not need to shoot again. If we take a look, you can see that shot, and imagine if that were the shot through the shin or down into the foot or into the ankle, you can imagine what kind of an effect that would have. Certainly it would significantly affect the target's ability to continue to try to hurt me. Even if we were lying on the ground and he wasn't relying on his stability, the pain, the distraction, the disability caused by hitting that leg would certainly get us into a better position than being here fighting with a gun or circling around trying to get a torso shot. Put your backs against the mannequin. Simulate a defensive response, all right? You're either covering your head up, you're elbowing, you're trying to stomp on his foot, you're doing all those things that you would do if someone were trying to hurt you. Give up. It's not working. We're going to go transition to a lethal response. Keep that left hand out here, controlling the knife, trying to peel his hands off your chest, whatever it is. Grip. Okay, as a group. I want you to come up against your body. Okay? Transition parallel with your thighs. Don't turn the gun sideways. No, against your body. This way. There you go. Like that. Don't point the gun at me. Don't point the gun at yourself. Transition across your body, parallel with your thighs. Drive down. Now you're going to look down. Keep that hand up. Drive down. 45-degree angle. Turn that gun out a little bit, more towards the toe. Again, out a little bit, more towards the toe. Out a little bit, more towards the toe. All right, and see how you're canted in your wrist? That's not a supported platform. Drive down further. Put the gun here. Relax the gun. You have to look through the gun. Okay. So move your body so that you're looking through the gun. Does that make sense? Yeah. Move your body so you're looking through the gun. Don't cant your wrist because it's not a supported platform. Touch the trigger. Slowly, smoothly press the trigger. Decock if you need to. Come back up, cross parallel with your thighs. Unorthodox target areas are an important part of understanding how to use contact shooting to defend yourself when you're in these situations. Lethal force is lethal force. When you fire a gun at another person with the intent of stopping them from hurting you or someone else, it's lethal force. Whether you shoot into the foot, you shoot into the leg, you shoot into the torso, or you miss, doesn't matter. Use firearms responsibly and appropriately, especially in these contact positions. Now, as you know, I'm a big fan of training in context and training realistically. We want to train most of the time for what is most likely to happen most of the time. And that's why we concentrate so much on a right-handed attack and a right-handed response. But I realize that some people watching this video may have people in their lives, or you yourselves may be left-handed and want to understand how these techniques work. Of course, they work in exactly the same way. So first, let's take a look at what would happen if we were left-handed and our attacker were still attacking right-handed with that threat. As we get into position, I'm obviously not wearing a left-handed holster. I'm simply going to put this firearm in position, and we're going to start from grip. So we're going to take from that recognition moment, coming in and trying to control the firearm. And obviously we would do this if we're left-handed. Our left hand would be out here. We would not naturally react by putting our hand on our gun and reaching in with our right hand. Unfortunately, we see that kind of choreographed stuff a lot of times in training. The natural reaction, left-handed or right-handed, would be to control that gun in these close quarters situations. So if we were here, we'd certainly come in like this again, or maybe with both hands to control the gun and stop it, and then transition to this position. Well, if I need my left hand to come back to the firearm, I'm going to have to transition control to my right hand and get into a position like this. As I do so, I'm simply going to get my grip with the left hand once I've maintained some kind of control on this weapon with my right. I need to put this elbow out as best I can and continue to maintain torso contact with the threat so that as I come up with my magazine well and strong thumb, which is now my left thumb, against my torso, I have my muzzle oriented towards the threat's torso, not going through my arm. I cannot afford to let go of this gun or knife and have a bad tie. I maintain control, check the angle with my safety officer. If he nods and approves, I can now touch and press and get that shot the same way into the vital area, an area that will significantly affect the target's ability to present a lethal threat, and then I would move on. Assuming that my threat would stop after one shot is not safe, so I would still maintain contact here and assess, do I need to shoot, do I not need to shoot? If the struggling and the resisting stops, I can take this gun away, move back into a ready position, and assess here further what's my next move. Probably to reholster, make contact with the authorities, make sure everyone I care about is still safe, or render aid if necessary. The other situation we want to talk about is what happens if the attacker is left-handed, or at least if the attack is coming from the attacker's left hand. This attacker is luckily ambidextrous. We can put this into a position here where now we can simulate that left-handed attack. Again, if I'm right-handed simulating an attack from the left side, I'm not going to pretend that my reaction would be to go to my gun and pin the weapon this way. Okay, that's not going to happen. Behaviorally, we're going to want to use our strong hand, and we're going to want to be able to be as efficient as we can and stop that weapon from being pointed at us on the side that it's closest to. So we're going to come in and control this way. When we control, again, I'm getting my torso in against the threat, in against his opponent. I'm using my legs, I'm using my body, I'm doing whatever I can to stop this person from being a threat and to make sure that I'm aware of where their body is. Again, whether we're against the wall, lying on the ground, whatever position we're in, this is important. Keeping my torso against him is critical if I want to know that my muzzle is likely to be oriented in a place that is going to significantly affect the target's ability to present a lethal threat without looking down. I need to have a spatial awareness of where that body is. So by being here, transitioning to a control with my offhand, I can reach back, grip, come up, orient the muzzle towards the threat. Again, in an administrative capacity here for training, I'm going to have the safety officer check and double check. My elbow is up, so my arm is not in front of my muzzle. Touch, press, fire the round into the threat. At this point, again, assess the situation. If the threat stops, I can strip the gun, drop the gun, come back into a ready position, and be here to assess and make sure that everything remains stable, and I don't need to continue to have a lethal response to that threat. Contact shooting is not easy. It's complicated. You need to think about all the variables, and most importantly, you need to train realistically. Once again, we're not going to train to shove and shoot someone who's really trying to hurt us. We need to assume that this person is faster, smarter, and stronger, or we wouldn't need to go to a lethal response. So shoving and shooting may be great on paper, but on real people, it's probably not going to work. We've looked at how to train these positions in a vertically oriented situation where we're pinned up against the wall, or someone has us pinned up against the wall, or maybe we are just in space but we are oriented very close to that threat. The reality is close quarters contact situations often end up horizontal down on the ground, and we certainly can train these positions in exactly the same way. So if we were here with this person and they drew a knife and started to hurt us, and we came in to stop that and ended up going down to the ground in this situation, we would still be controlling that weapon, making sure that it wasn't going to hurt us at this moment. But if we realized that this person was smarter, faster, stronger, more skilled, was able to get this knife towards our leg, up towards our body, or maybe they have a gun, and that gun is oriented towards a crowd, and they're firing rounds, or they're, again, bringing that gun back towards us, or even just a physical threat where they're hitting us with an object or their hands. If we're in this position, we maintain our orientation with our body up against the threat so that we know where they are. We don't have to look down. We could be up here. We could have a hand in our face. We could be blinded. It could be completely dark. We could be inside of a vehicle. Any situation. As long as we have an idea where that body is, we grip. We've made the decision to transition to a lethal response. We come up out of the holster. We orient the muzzle towards the threat. Safety officer, again, will check the angle, and then we will touch, press, and fire that round. Okay. We, again, may be in a situation where we have to come up, orient, and press multiple times to get the threat to stop. While these shots that go into the side of the torso here wouldn't be optimum, again, they wouldn't be the kinds of shots that we would get if we were standing up, extending full arms extension in our line of sight, parallel with our line of sight, maybe even using our sight alignment, sight picture principle to hit the high center chest or some other area that was more likely to significantly affect the target's ability to hurt us. These are still combat accurate, and these shots that we have into the side of the torso are going to affect this person's ability to fight us. Another thing I want to point out is that in this environment, we are in a training area designed for this situation, where we're shooting down into an area that's got rubber and metal grates with frangible ammunition and a safe steel stop with standoff underneath. This is a very controlled situation and not the kind of thing that you would want to do in an uncontrolled environment. But again, in this position with an airsoft gun or with a sim gun, I get exactly the same type of situation. At this point, again, we would assess the situation. If the threat were done, we would take the weapon, we would move back, maintaining a safe and secure posture, making sure that we kept our balance, kept our muzzle oriented in a safe direction. We're in that high compressed ready, and we come back, assess the situation, discard the weapon, secure the weapon, make sure no one else is hurt, contact the authorities, do all of the things that we know we're going to do post-critical incident during that aftermath. Understanding that these situations can go horizontal as well as vertical is really important. Making sure that you don't just train these things in isolation. We've looked at some very static examples. I'm going to have a training partner come in. We're going to get a sim gun, and we're actually going to look at some of this stuff now at speed, how it would actually happen. You would never want to do this with live firearms in the area, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of this, bring some training guns up, take a look at that next. So we've looked at a lot of choreographed situations for training these positions. Again, when we use live fire, we really need to have overemphasis on safety. If there was ever a time when we're especially more dangerous with firearms than normal, it's going to be when we're shooting in directions and we can't see the muzzle. We can't see what direction the muzzle's pointed in. That's why we need our safety officers and our training partners and hopefully a qualified, experienced instructor to watch the angles and make sure we're safe. Much better to be able to use a sim gun in this way if you don't have those types of controls in place, or an airsoft gun or something like that, even a BB gun or a pellet gun with no pellets or BBs in it, something where you can have a firearm in your hand, you can hear the sound, you can feel some sensation, but without the risk of live fire. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this sim gun, which obviously has been checked by both of us that are involved in this. We're wearing safety glasses. We're in a situation here where we're going to go into a relatively controlled and choreographed situation, but what we want to demonstrate is the speed with which this happens in real life. So especially when we talked about that most difficult of the training positions where you're being choked from behind and you're going to respond with the magazine well pressed up against your body and the muzzle oriented behind you. Even that can happen very, very quickly. And we don't want you to get the impression that that's going to take 20 to 30 seconds that you might not have to actually get into a position to respond to that lethal threat, that force of the choke, that fear that you have that someone is going to kill you. You're going to be able to get into this position quickly and intuitively. Now, it may not be perfect, it may not be textbook, but again, it's the principles and the fundamentals that apply, not the choreographed SOP. So in this situation, are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, I'm ready. We have no live weapons. We've removed our knives and our blades. We're in a force-on-force scenario. We have safety glasses because the main risk of serious injury here in this situation is going to be this pellet bouncing off the ground or something like that coming back up towards our eyes. We take care of that. And at some point, I'm going to be standing here in my nonviolent posture trying to calm Jeremiah down. He's going to jump at me, and we're going to see where this goes, probably ending up in some kind of a choke to demonstrate exactly how we would respond to this during a realistic situation. Good. In that situation, you saw how using the technique that we train in a realistic situation certainly isn't as easy, but also doesn't take nearly as long with the safety requirements of firing live fire. That's exactly the situation that would have developed had I been armed, had I been attacked in that way, and that person got me into that position where they were behind me, threatening me with a lethal attack, and my recourse was to go to lethal response, significantly affect their ability to present a lethal threat, come into the ready position, assess, and then, of course, deciding what to do next. Understand that these things happen very, very fast. You need to train, visualize, think realistically in order to use these techniques as fast as things actually happen. Contact shooting isn't just about defending yourself from the person you're in contact with. You also have to consider a situation where you've been able to stop a threat or get someone under control enough so that you don't have to use lethal force against them, but someone else may then present a lethal threat. And you have that articulable situation where this person, you've controlled their threat, and maybe an elbow, maybe a knee, maybe just the simple fact that you aggressed them when they went to draw a knife on you, caused them to stop their attack, and they're relatively under control. If you then recognize a threat in some direction, 360 degrees off of that target, you certainly wouldn't want to let go of that person and respond in a traditional way. If you were to do that, this person would be able to knock your gun out of the way, fight you over your gun, hit you, attack you, pick the knife back up, and get back into a threatening position. We certainly wouldn't want to empower them and give them that opportunity. especially if we're in a situation where we know, based on our balance of speed and precision and our previous training, that we should be able to get combat accurate hits in this circumstance one-handed. So what I'm going to do is actually practice the idea of recognizing this guy as a threat, moving in because I'm within 2 arms reach, and if I try to move back, I'm going to end up in a bad tie situation where he's able to hurt me as I draw my firearm. So I'm going to move in and actually try to control this person this way. And let's say that I am able to. I strip that knife from their hand and they stop, or they're still struggling, but they're not a lethal threat. And then this person's partner, brother, friend, somebody who doesn't know him and doesn't understand what's going on maybe, threatens me and tells me that they are going to hurt me. Maybe they have a knife, they have a gun, they have a stick. I am now in lethal fear from one of those targets, and what I'm actually going to do to create a little more realism and a little more unpredictability is while I'm in here controlling this guy, my training partner is going to actually call out a number, and that number will represent the recognition stimulus of someone saying they're going to hurt me and me needing to respond with an appropriate lethal response. Shoot! Now you notice I kept contact with this target the entire time. By keeping my torso up against his and using my legs to control him, I don't lose control of this person. As if I were to turn to shoot like this isn't control. This would leave me open to another counterattack from this person. By staying in contact, I'm able to extend, touch, press, and get combat accurate hits that significantly affect that target's ability to present a lethal threat relatively efficiently. Let's take another look. 3. As you saw in that situation, my holster presentation wasn't very smooth. Now, if all I ever did with this holster and this firearm combination was react, lateral movement, extend, touch, press, and I never got the opportunity to train in this awkward situation, that hesitation, that fumbling of the draw may have happened when I really needed the firearm and really needed to present off to my strong side. Training in a realistic way means creating learning opportunities. Often those learning opportunities in high-level reality-based training are failures. That failure to get the firearm out of the holster quickly and efficiently is a reminder to me to make sure that I slow down, get my good grip, defeat the retention capabilities of the holster before pulling the firearm up and preparing to orient towards a threat. It's just that kind of learning opportunity that might save me or those I care about in a realistic situation. When we talk about contact shooting, we're not just talking about shooting while we're in contact with the person that we need to shoot. So we looked at what would happen if we were in contact with someone we needed to control or we were trying to keep out of the harm's way, maybe a wife or a bystander or someone we were trying to control because they were trying to hurt us, and then we had to shoot off to the side or even shoot behind us to defend ourselves in some other situation. Of course, that could also happen when we're on the ground. Another way to think about shooting while in contact is going to be thinking about whether or not you would be in a crowd. What if you were in a crowd, maybe an active shooter response, or you were in a public environment when someone attacked you or attacked your family and you wanted to defend yourself, understanding that you might need to be stopping that person from bumping into you who has no threat whatsoever towards you. The person's not trying to hurt you, they're just trying to get away from the person behind them that's trying to shoot you or them or anybody that they can. And as they run by you, understanding that they're going to bump into you and affect your ability to shoot, or maybe it's just that crowd pressure from either side, all of those things are going on. So if you're fighting and straining against someone who's in contact with you or bumping into you, you need to have that much more deviation control as much as you can. You might be able to use 2 hands and just get bounced around a little bit. You might take 1 hand off the gun and decide you're better off trying to control those people who are bumping into you as you extend, touch, press, and engage your threat. Let's take a look at this drill. This drill is our shove and shoot drill, and the shove and shoot drill we do is you're shooting, your training partner is shoving you around. Now, it's important to understand the safety controls. So everybody take a look here at what John and I are going to do. If John's here on the line as he gets ready to shoot, I'm not going to literally shove him. I'm not going to push him to where he might go in front of someone else's muzzle or fall down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use hip and shoulder control to move him around but not let go. So I'm going to stay in constant contact so that if he were to, say, trip on this rubber mat and start falling forward, I could grab him and pull him back. So if someone has a duty belt or body armor, this is a great way to hold on to them. If not, if they're just a self-defense person who's interested in training this technique, that's fine, that's great too. We want to make sure we just keep control of them, whether by their belt, by their shirt, by putting our hands in front of the shoulders as we push and pull around. We move sideways, we move back and forth, but we're always in contact. We're not pulling and letting go or pushing and letting go. Everybody understand that from a safety standpoint? Okay. Want everybody to get in front of the targets? Every other person, starting with Peter, just take a step back. So Peter's going to step back, Mike step back, and stand behind your training partner. Okay, your training partner, when we start this drill, we're going to go to the high compressed ready. So go ahead and go to the high compressed ready. The range is hot. On the command up, you're going to fire 2 to 3 rounds into the area that you believe is going to be combat accurate on your target. Okay, the target in front of you will represent a threat from the moment I say up. After you fire your 2 to 3 rounds, you'll visualize that threat stopping, and then you'll come back into the high compressed ready. What I want you to understand is what your training partner is going to do is move you around. Now I want the guys to start out on this first round at about 10% of the energy that you think is appropriate. And then we're going to go to 30%, 50%, 80%, and then we're going to go up eventually, once we get comfortable with the concept of the drill, to the maximum safe level that you can move them around. The people up front need to understand that based on that interference, your balance of speed and precision is going to change. You may be firing very, very slowly with a lot of external cognitive deviation control. When you're being moved around a lot, you may fire very, very quickly when you're only getting 10% of that maximum safe energy. Everyone clear? Stand by for your command to fire. Up! Okay. Remember, you're responsible for your hits. You want to get good combat accurate hits on your target. Integrate lateral movement. If someone's coming towards you, you're going to laterally move out of their way. So integrate your lateral movement into this drill. Up! 2 to 3 shots. Training partners, start moving it up a little bit. As the comfort level increases, you increase the amount of energy. Up! Switch. Front row holster. Second row move up. Same thing. Now, the normal human behavior is you just finished at a high level of energy. Make sure you remember to go back to that 10% level. Start out slow. Don't start them out at the same level of energy that you just finished at. Everyone's clear? Go to the high compressed ready position. Stand by for your commands to fire. You should be on new targets. Make sure everybody's on a new target. Up! And remember, by integrating your lateral movement, you're naturally going to get into that compressed, lowered center of gravity combative position. So if you're standing up perfectly straight, your shots aren't going to be as controlled as if you get into that good, combat efficient, natural, neutral stance. Up! Much better. So you took your group size and cut it down to 20% of what it was just by stooping a little bit and getting into that natural position and really resisting with good body balance and good position. Now up the ante, move a little harder. Up! Two or 3 shots per presentation. Remember, mix it up. Don't shoot a pattern. Up! During the reload, keep up the energy. Pull that gun in for retention. Rack the slide, decock, or shoot. Excellent. Now, what I want you to do is let's go to the place where this person really is clinging to you. Let's say that this person is really scared of the threat, as they should be, and they're clinging to you. They're trying to get you to help them. They don't understand they're interfering with your ability to address the threat with the appropriate lethal response. So what I want you to do is just cant your body, use your offhand to try to grab them back and control them. All right, you're certainly going to keep your firearm oriented towards the threat. You're going to extend with one arm, use balance, speed, and precision principles to control your deviation. Make sure that you're getting combat accurate hits, but I want you to do it one-handed. You're probably going to find this is a little easier to put some force back into that threat while you're extending and shooting. Up! Make sure you're slowing down the pace of your shooting. Without slowing down the pace of your shooting, you won't be able to compensate for the one-handed need for control. Up! Good. And now holster. And finally, that'll be the last growth point for this particular drill. This will be the last evolution, where now you're going to start with your hands off of your training partner. Your training partner is going to do lateral movement and reach to present from the holster. As they're presenting from the holster, you'll make contact and you'll start affecting their ability to smoothly shoot. Everyone clear? Stand by. Up! Keep it up during the reload. Keep the motion up during the reload. You want to try to maintain consistency. Holster. Go ahead and switch positions. The first group is now going to go to the high compressed ready and do it one-handed. Understanding the importance of mixing up your drills, making them as realistic as possible, and making sure that everyone gets a chance to do it is obviously very important when you're on a training range. Contact shooting is not just about shooting the person you're in contact with. It might mean compensating for other forms of contact when you need to address a separate lethal threat. I hope you got a lot out of this video covering extreme close quarters tactics. Understanding that things that happen within 2 arms reach are a lot different than we often train for in that wide open environment, that regular square range or that wide open gymnasium. It could be the stairwell, it could be the narrow hallway, could be inside your vehicle, could be in a closet. Your extreme close quarters situation is going to be unique, but understanding the principles that are at work within that 2 arms distance are incredibly important. Maybe it's going to be an elevator. But at least now we're better prepared than we were to deal with bad things in tight places.
Thanks for watching this edition of the Personal Firearm Defense DVD series. Practice the tactics and training drills you've just learned at your favorite shooting range, and you're going to gain the confidence and skills you need to effectively protect yourself with your firearm. Remember to check and understand the firearm laws in your area, especially as they relate to personal protection and concealed carry. See you next time.